So you've been studying perspectives and you've understood what environment breaks down. And this is going to be a video about art studies for dummies and how to do environment art. So you just started, you're like maybe a week in, maybe two, and you just started learning how to do perspective art. You've understood the basics of your 2-point perspectives and 1-point perspectives. And today I'm going to talk about how to create or use the flow of your line work to create environments through these perspectives that you've already learned on. One of the most basic rules that I keep in my work for all the environment stuff is like keeping your sketch loose. Simple lines, flow with the perspective grids, applying your box and cube drawing studies that you've been doing with the perspective grids to keep your environment consistent. So how does it work? The first very thing is the simple lines part, right? I'm not trying to create details. I'm not trying to create a perfect environment. What I'm doing is looking at the reference and just draw. The lines can be rough. They don't have to be perfect. They don't even have to have like line weights or anything at the start. It's just sketching things down very, very loosely. The looser or the more hands-free, or you could say like very open-ended sketches you keep when you start off, the easier it's going to be for you to experiment with a lot of things, right? So one of the most important things is it's okay to make mistakes. Make mistakes. These are thumbnails. These are sketches. These are things that you don't have to worry about when you're working on trying to create very strong environment art, where you're just like, I'm just experimenting things. I'm not worried about trying to create something perfect. So make mistakes. Don't hesitate to try something new. Experimenting is going to be easier in this step in process because you're considering your thumbnails like a rough draft. This is when you're just trying to understand what you want to make, how you want to make things, and you're just looking at all the stuff that inspires you, or probably you take things to reference from, and you're drawing them into your paper, whether it's traditional or digital, and you're just drawing them the way you want to do it. One of the other things that I very commonly use that you can also see in the video is the eraser tool, especially if I'm using it digitally, because digital paper does not really get, it doesn't really spoil when you're erasing on paper, at least in the digital medium. So the eraser tool can be used like carving out lines, or you could say like erasing the lines out from the sketch to create negative spaces. I'll go a little into it real quick, but my point here is negative spaces create a asymmetrical interest or a visual interest which could draw the viewer away from your sketch. So I could create negative spaces to showcase some form of emptiness, where the areas which have a lot more lines or give you a lot more sense of detail could be the area of visual interest. So it's kind of like counterworking with the line sketch drawings that you're already doing. So it actually leads me to another point. Don't worry about details. Just lines. Don't worry about details. Lines, when you're working with sketches, it's all about just loosely drawing as much as you can. The more you draw, the more you practice, the better you'll get. So keeping the lines as organic as possible and not trying to be very strict on yourself that you have to make those lines super straight is actually good for you, right? So as you can see in my sketches, I'm drawing very carefree, and of course the video is sped up, but I'm drawing very carefree. And the reason for that is letting me just flow my hand on the canvas and not worry about what I'm trying to draw in perfection, right? So I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm not trying to create the exact textures I want. I'm just scribbling it out or doodling it out, as you can say. And it just creates an expression of detail rather than the actual detail. And that's something that you should be focused on. Like, just, the goal should be is just, the overall picture is just creating an expression of detail. And again, using back the eraser tool, I can actually create like, maybe I can thin down the lines, or I can erase some lines, or even draw further to make certain parts of the line work a little more thick. This is going to help me solidify my shape and form, which I'm basically looking at from the references. And this comes to the next thing. The most important point, the application to perspective, the whole point of this entire video. You've been drawing cubes and all the other objects to make you understand, like, okay, if I'm going to take a cube in a perspective grid, how does that cube look in a certain angle within that perspective grid? And that's what you understood from all those drawing studies, right? Now, to use them is, you could say, as you don't try to be rigid, not as rigid as the way you were working with the cube. Rather, this is where my application comes into play. Drawing loose lines, right? The way you draw these loose lines is, you've got a perspective grid, and you let these loose lines follow like a contour that is just going around the grid. So it could be a curve, it could be anything. The whole goal is that these lines are still following the rules of the perspective grid. They're not exactly breaking it. They're still following it. And I don't want to break it. I just want to keep it around the entire perspective grid. The reason for this is it's creating consistency, and that is what I'm looking for. The consistency in turn creates depth, or an illusion of depth, in this 2D image plane, and that's what I'm trying to do here, right? Another thing is, it's also helping me show scale, as well as like the form of that scale. Like, see, I've got a human figure on a very big object, so how big is that object? If it's very far, then maybe I've got a human figure close up, which shows like, okay, that's the scale of the human. Probably another human figure that's really close to the far off object to show like that's how big the object is in comparison. So it lets you do the shapes of big, medium, small when you do these kind of exercises. So that's the whole application to perspectives. This is why you learn perspectives in the first place, right? So coming to the actual details and the other things that I'm showcasing still in the sketches and thumbnails that I'm making. I use a lot of, you could say, line weight, but not in the start, like as I keep building up my drawing. And I use the line weight to dictate what is an important part or important object in that environment and what is it. Most of the time, the form of the object will be in thick lines, while as the details, the inner details of that object will be in thin lines. This is something like you could say it's like a hack, but it's not exactly always applicable to every single scenario, but you could say 90% of the scenarios it's going to work for you. So definitely give that a try. It's an experimentation. It's always going to work in your favor, so don't worry about it. And just keep drawing. The more you practice this thing, the better you'll get. Even I'm not super perfect at it, I'm still learning. One of the very important things I do here is, like, you must have seen the entire video, I'm using references. And I'm actually using the reference of that environment and literally drawing that environment. Almost, you could say, the composition of that environment is 1-to-1 rather than the environment details itself, right? And then on top of that, the other references that I have, I'm taking elements from there, like, the little building structures and all that stuff. I'm taking elements from there and adding it to my main composition. So use references for your environment art. Don't try to make something complicated or anything like that, right? So this method is actually going to help you ideate things really, really fast. You don't have to worry about color. You don't have to worry about values. You don't have to do anything. Just sketch to ideate, come up with quick ideas. And this is one of the methods that we even professionally till date use as an artist, right? It's easy to practice, and it also really, really helps you to get into more complicated designs later in the future as you get a hang of this. It also improves your composition, so definitely referencing things out and just trying to make that from the reference itself is one of the best exercises that you can do for sketching. Alright, so with that, thank you. This is pretty much the entire video. Please like and subscribe if you like my channel. I'm just making videos about improving my art journey, and that's about it. Nothing beyond that, and nothing really crazy. I'm just a professional artist who also does YouTube videos because I need an outlet for my creativity. So yeah, once again, thank you for coming in, and I hope you enjoyed this video.